If you're always the one adjusting, apologizing, accommodating, it's not a fluke. It's not that the world has suddenly turned cruel. It's because somewhere along the way you trained the world to expect that from you. Not with your words, but with your reactions. You didn't push back. You didn't say no. You let silence speak for you, and it said, "Go ahead." Let's be clear, kindness isn't the issue. Your boundaries are. That invisible framework that should protect your energy, your values, your time. It's either cracked or completely missing. And as much as it might sting to admit it, Niccolo Machiavelli, a man writing centuries before the word self-care existed, understood this better than any modern guru preaching balance and positivity. He didn't call them boundaries, he called them strategy, tactics, lines in psychological warfare. And that's exactly what they are. He knew power wasn't about yelling the loudest or always getting away. It was about presence. And that presence is built on the rules you silently enforce, the ones that shape how others treat you. The thing is, people don't just decide to respect you. They read your cues, your tone, your tolerance, your reactions. If you never follow through when someone disrespects you, then you've given them no reason to take you seriously. You're not a doormat because you're too compassionate. You're a doormat because you let compassion replace command. Big difference. Think about it. Most people see boundaries as soft. A gentle no, a polite excuse, a casual "I need space." But to Machiavelli, that would be laughable. To him, boundaries were more like a drawbridge on a castle, not there for show, there to block entry. And that's the shift from protection to power. You don't set boundaries to protect your peace. You set them to command your space. Machiavelli's version of boundaries wasn't about feelings. It was about function, a clear psychological perimeter between your values and the chaos of others. He once implied that the wise man never allows others to shape his nature. Why? Because once someone else decides how you should be treated, you've lost autonomy. You're no longer directing your life. You're reacting to it. When you allow repeated violations, even small ones without consequence, you're broadcasting one very specific message. You're in control, not me. And they hear you loud and clear. The moment you set a boundary but do nothing when it's crossed, it turns into a suggestion. But boundaries aren't suggestions. They're silent ultimatums. They say, this far and no further. Violate this line and something gets taken from you. It could be attention, trust, access. But something must be lost. Otherwise, it was never a line. It was a soft hope, and people don't adjust to your hopes. They respond to your structure. That friend who always needs you when it's convenient, they learned you'll answer. That colleague who shifts their workload onto your lap, they learned you'll accept. That partner who guilt trips you out of your needs, they learned you'll cave. You didn't say the words, but your actions trained them perfectly. And once they know there's no cost for pushing your limits, why would they stop? That's not cruelty. That's logic. This is where Machiavelli's first law of power comes into play. Stop being nice when you should be clear. His advice to rulers wasn't be feared at all times. It was be feared when necessary. Why? Because fear is effective. When people know that pushing you has a price, they hesitate. When they know it doesn't, they push more. That's how you become the nice one, the easygoing one, the they'll understand person, and that identity, it will drain you dry. You'll give until you're empty. Then they'll ask for more, and you'll feel guilty for even thinking about saying no. Kindness without clarity is a slow, smiling form of self-erasure. You're not being helpful. You're dissolving. The solution isn't to become rude. It's to become immovable. Instead of asking to be liked, require to be respected. And if that respect must come with a whisper of fear, so be it. Boundaries don't work because you say them sweetly. They work because violating them feels expensive. That's the lesson. That's the shift. Machiavelli knew mercy only works when backed by the credible threat of its opposite. You can't forgive endlessly. If betrayal has no cost, then loyalty has no value. Let's be blunt. If someone talks over you and you laugh it off, they'll do it again. If they gossip about you and you stay silent, they'll get bolder. If they violate your emotional space and still get your warmth, they've learned your boundaries are just theater. Performative, decorative, not policy. The correction, make it costly. Cold withdrawal, a direct confrontation, or a complete emotionless cutoff. You don't need to burn their house down, but they need to feel the temperature drop. Only then will they pause. Only then will they learn that you're not bluffing. Machiavelli saw silence not as passivity, but as weaponized restraint. That kind of silence. It's a loaded gun. It's how the truly powerful operate. They don't shout, they don't beg, they disappear, they shift, and that shift leaves a mark. Let's go deeper, because the real reason boundaries fail isn't the announcement. It's what comes after. The test, the pushback. The moment they pretend not to hear the line you just drew. This is the phase Machiavelli warned about most the part, where rulers fall. They create policies but hesitate to enforce them. They say they want order, but flinch when it gets messy. That's when their kingdom crumbles. Yours will too if you let softness interrupt structure. This is where most people fail. Not at the boundary itself, but at the enforcement. The moment after you draw the line is when the true test begins. People will ignore it. They'll test it. Pretend they didn't notice it. Laugh it off. Or worse, try to make you feel guilty for setting it. And if you flinch even once the whole structure collapses. That's why Machiavelli emphasized early punishment. Not because he loved cruelty, but because hesitation breeds rebellion. When the lines are soft, when the rules wobble, when consequences are delayed or diluted, people take note. Oh, they think this is flexible, and they push harder next time. You don't need to yell, you don't need to get dramatic. But when someone crosses the line, your response must be fast, clear, and final. Not up for discussion. You stop replying, you walk away, you cancel the meeting, you uninvite, you change your energy without explanation. One moment, warm, the next ice. That contrast is what sticks in memory. It's not about revenge, it's about education. You're teaching people that this isn't a game. This isn't temporary. Your boundaries are not soft suggestions or vibes, they're part of your identity. And if someone disrespects them, they don't get the same version of you anymore. That's the cost. Reframe it this way, your boundaries are not emotional outbursts. They are systems. Systems that govern your time, your energy, your inner peace. You don't set boundaries because you're angry. You set them to maintain order. Think of yourself as a kingdom. Every time you let a violator roam free within your walls, you erode the safety of the entire realm. That's not strength. That's sabotage. So instead of asking, am I overreacting? Ask this. What kind of world am I building by allowing this? Because every permission you give someone to overstep is a vote for chaos. And every consequence you enforce is a vote for order. This is why emotional distance is your most underrated weapon. Machiavelli advised princes to remain emotionally detached from their people, not because he wanted cold rulers, but because he knew emotional closeness is easily exploited. People twist empathy into leverage. They take softness as permission. You need to practice a similar discipline. When someone disrespects you, your instinct may be to over-explain, to plead for understanding, to prove you're not overreacting. But every extra word waters down the message. Instead, go quiet. Pull back. Don't argue. Don't debate. Let them feel your absence. Silence speaks more powerfully than a monologue ever could. It says, I'm no longer accessible to you. And when they ask why, don't explain. Just say, you know why. That one line forces introspection. It plants fear. It forces them to retrace their steps and ask, what did I do? You're not confirming or denying. You're not holding court. You're pulling the strings behind the curtain. That's the art of strategic ambiguity, a favorite Machiavellian tactic. When people don't know exactly where the boundary is, they tiptoe. They regulate themselves. They behave just in case. That's psychological control. And it's far more efficient than constantly managing people through discussion. The people who break your boundaries the most are often the ones who are most sensitive to energy shifts. So stop trying to warn them. Let them feel it. You don't need to remove them loudly. You just become unavailable. Your praise disappears. Your attention evaporates. You're no longer curious about their day. You stop sending the just checking in texts. You don't reply with emojis or exclamation marks. You respond like a ghost who's still technically online but has already left the room. You become empty, not because you're petty, but because you're powerful. And powerful people don't chase clarity. They are the clarity. A man who vanishes without warning is more terrifying than one who shouts. Why? Because the silence is unpredictable. It leaves them to fill in the blanks, and what they imagine is always worse than what you'd say. This is value building through scarcity. Another Machiavellian principle. The prince who is always available becomes common. The one who withdraws becomes mysterious and therefore powerful. You must treat your energy as royal property. You don't give it freely. You don't explain its distribution. People don't get to demand your presence. They earn it, or they miss it. Period. So ask yourself who gets access without effort, who assumes you'll always be there, who drains your energy and offers nothing back. And now start reversing it. Make kindness a privilege. Make your warmth something they work for. Let people feel that access is no longer guaranteed. That's how you teach respect. Not through begging, but through scarcity. The second they realize your kindness isn't automatic, they stop taking it for granted. Your life is not a public park. It's a fortress, a well-defended space where not everyone gets a key. Most people's emotional lives are open borders. Anyone can walk in, cause a mess, and leave. But you're building a kingdom. Machiavelli would remind you, your time is currency. Your attention is influence. Your emotions are national security. Treat them as such. Decline invitations without guilt. Decline calls without apologies. Protect your peace like it's gold in a vault. Keep your inner circle small, impossibly small. No one respects a fortress with open gates, and no one fears a ruler who lets everyone sit on the throne. Shut the door. Let them knock. Let them wonder if they're still welcome. And if they are, make sure they know it's not because they asked. It's because they earned it. This isn't about ego. It's about structure. You're no longer reacting to life. You're designing it. Through boundaries, through consequences, through silence. This is how you begin to shift the narrative. You're not just someone who wants respect. You're someone who enforces it. Not emotionally, not aggressively, but architecturally. And in the next layers of this transformation, we'll shift from enforcement to reputation training others to self-regulate around you without needing to be corrected at all. Because the best boundaries, they're not the ones you have to defend. They're the ones no one dares to test. You've drawn the line. You've enforced it. You've gone silent, withdrawn your energy, and shown that kindness is no longer a default, it's earned. Now comes the next evolution, changing how people see you. Because at a certain point, the most powerful boundaries are not the ones you speak or even the ones you enforce. They're the ones people never dare to cross in the first place. This is where Machiavelli's deeper strategy begins. He wasn't just interested in reactions. He was obsessed with reputation. Because once you control how others perceive you, they begin to regulate themselves. And you get to move through the world without constantly having to correct, defend, or explain. Think of the spaces where people automatically adjust their behavior. A cathedral, a courtroom, an expensive hotel lobby. No one needs to shout, "Be respectful." The setting itself commands it. That's what your presence should become. A psychological space that demands respect by simply existing. The same way people lower their voice in front of a judge or straighten their posture in a job interview, they should instinctively know this person doesn't tolerate disrespect. And Machiavelli's genius lay in understanding how to create that effect without force. Through framing. Your identity is a frame. It tells others how to treat you. The problem. Most people walk around wearing the wrong label. Nice, it sounds harmless, even flattering, but Machiavelli would call it a death sentence. Nice is code for permissive. Safe, won't push back. And once that's your identity, people stop handling you with care. They assume you'll bend, that you'll smile through the insult, that you'll be there when they need you, no matter how they treat you. So you must burn that label. Replace it with something else. Something harder to pin down. Calm but unshakable. Generous but not available. Friendly but unreadable. Kind but cold when needed. And here's the key. Don't announce this shift. Show it. People won't believe your new identity because you say you've changed. They'll believe it when they feel the difference in the micro moments. The missing smile, the longer pause, the stiffer posture. The way your yes now comes with slower hesitation. These subtle cues send a powerful signal. I'm not who I used to be. Start small. Stop over-smiling. Stop cushioning your words with I'm sorry, or just checking, or I hope this isn't a bother. These phrases were trained into you, but they erode presence. They scream, I'm trying to be harmless. But you're not here to be harmless. You're here to be solid, controlled. A presence people consider before crossing. Even your silences should speak. Doormats talk too much. They rush to fill awkward space with apologies, jokes, or explanations. But silence, when intentional, is one of the sharpest tools of influence. Machiavelli prized it for a reason. When you fall silent after someone disrespects you, it forces them to fill in the blanks. Was that too far? Are they upset? Did I lose them? That uncertainty creates tension. And tension breeds caution. You must become the person who doesn't flinch when things get awkward. The person who stares back instead of laughing when someone makes a passive-aggressive joke. The person who doesn't raise their voice when challenged, but simply says, that doesn't work for me, and stops talking. These responses don't invite argument. They end it. That's control. Not dominance, not aggression, just the kind of quiet weight that makes people think twice. The same way a teacher can control a room without ever shouting. It's posture, tone, pause, precision. When you remove the need to defend or justify yourself, you become unpredictable. And that unpredictability, it's intimidating. People don't fear you, they fear misreading you. And that fear keeps them in check. Be the first to withdraw. Power always belongs to the person willing to walk away first from the argument, from the deal, from the dynamic. Machiavelli advised rulers to be emotionally detached, not because he was heartless, but because he understood the danger of clinging. When you fear walking away, you surrender leverage. So practice detachment like a skill. In conversations, in relationships, in business, be ready to leave. That doesn't mean you have to want to. Just be ready. And when people sense that readiness, they'll stop taking you for granted. You don't have to explain your departure. You don't have to write a long message or post cryptic stories. You just exit, quietly, sharply, like closing a door in a room that no longer deserves your warmth. And let that absence echo louder than anything you could say. Here's another Machiavellian tactic: contrast. When someone treats you well, reward them with openness, warmth, generosity. When they don't, go cold. Withdraw. The shift between the two should be so dramatic that people learn your best is earned, not expected. This contrast trains behavior better than any conversation. Because people are pattern-seeking. They'll remember when I listened, they were fully present. When I interrupted, they pulled away. When I respected their time, they leaned in. When I didn't, they disappeared. That's operant conditioning, basic psychology. But most people are too afraid to apply it in real life. Here's the truth: if someone keeps violating your boundaries, it's because they've never felt the cost. And if they never feel the cost, they'll never stop. So don't warn them again. Don't repeat yourself. That weakens the boundary. Machiavelli wrote, "When punishment is necessary, let it be swift and never repeated." So live by this rule. One line, one warning, one action, no chaser, no second lecture. When they say, "Why are you acting different?" you respond, "I already told you once." I don't repeat myself. That one line is a statement of finality. It tells them, I'm not here to manage your learning curve. My boundaries are not group projects. You get it or you lose access. No more emotional ping pong. No more debates. No more meetings about what's fair. Because the second you start re-explaining your standards, they stop seeing them as standards. They see them as preferences, and preferences are negotiable. Standards are not. So let your presence carry weight. Let your words carry finality. Let your boundaries carry cost. This isn't about cruelty. It's about engineering respect. Stay unreadable. That's the final layer most people never think to build. Predictability is comfortable for them. Dangerous for you. Because once people know exactly how you respond, how long it takes for you to forgive, how much guilt it takes to sway you, how much silence it takes for you to come crawling back. You're not a person anymore. You're a system to be manipulated, a vending machine of forgiveness. They just push the right buttons and outcomes become predictable. That's not power, that's automation. And Machiavelli would advise disable the automation, break the pattern, become unreadable again. Say maybe more often. Respond slowly. Let silence stretch. And when you say no, don't soften it with a smile. Your softness should be intentional, not habitual. That's what most people miss. They think being nice means being morally superior. But to Machiavelli, being nice was a tactic and a dangerous one if used all the time. People will test your flexibility, not your morality. And if you're always soft, you're always bendable. But when you become harder to calculate, you become harder to manipulate. That's when they stop pushing. Let your standards be visible. Not through lectures, not through Instagram captions, but through your actions. You don't need to cut people off with fireworks and blocked numbers. Sometimes the most Machiavellian move is to let them disqualify themselves. Quietly. Cleanly. Here's how: keep leveling up without apologizing. Make your schedule tighter. Keep your energy clean. Raise your emotional standards so high that chaotic, inconsistent people just bounce off it naturally. No confrontation. No dramatic goodbyes. Just natural selection. The ones who can't handle the altitude of your new frequency will leave themselves. And that's the beauty of setting a standard instead of setting fires. The right people rise to meet you. The wrong people just fade out. Not because you cut them, but because they couldn't climb. And you didn't have to argue. You didn't have to scream. You didn't have to warn. You simply existed with clarity, and clarity is polarizing. This is where Machiavellian power really shows its face. Because you've stopped defending your boundaries, you've built them into the architecture of your life. Your new identity doesn't ask for respect, it implies it. It's baked into your tone, your pace, your pauses, your lack of over-explaining. Now people interact with you differently. They pause before interrupting. They double-check their tone. They think twice before making that same old joke at your expense. Why? Because they've seen the contrast. They've seen what happens when respect is offered and when it isn't. They've experienced the version of you that is warm, attentive, and generous. And they've seen the version that disappears behind a steel door when the line is crossed. That's called behavioral conditioning. And it's how you train people without ever raising your voice. Never repeat yourself. That is your golden rule from now on. If you've said the limit once, that's enough. Repeating it weakens it. Every time you say this is the last time and then let it slide, you're retraining them to ignore your words. Your actions must follow immediately and without wobble. That's the backbone Machiavelli wanted in a ruler. Not someone who reacts emotionally, but someone whose limits are law. And when someone breaks it and acts confused, respond simply, "I already told you." Not cold, not angry, just done. Because if they need a second reminder, they don't respect the first. And if you keep handing out reminders, they'll keep gambling that the cost of crossing you is lower than the reward of doing it. Remove that gamble. Make the cost of crossing you known, fast, and final. Let's take it one step further. People need to be uncertain around you, not confused about who you are, but uncertain about what happens if they cross you. That's Machiavelli's genius. The best boundaries are not a list. They're a mystery. He often spoke in veiled language, indirect threats, calculated silence. Not because he was hiding, because mystery makes people behave better. When they're not sure how you'll react, they'll tread carefully. They'll err on the side of caution. Why? Because they don't want to find out what happens when you've had enough. Try this when someone disrespects you. Don't give a speech. Say less. Maybe nothing. Maybe just pull back and offer no reason. Let them panic. Let them replay the moment over and over, wondering where they went wrong. Say, "You know why." Then stop. That uncertainty will haunt them. Not because you're being manipulative, but because you've introduced a new standard. Your energy is a privilege, and you don't hand out instructions on how to keep it. Withdraw your energy. It's your highest currency. Don't yell. Don't quote Machiavelli on your story. Don't text a paragraph at 1 a.m. Just remove access to what they value most: your attention, your warmth, your curiosity, your laughter, your responses. Suddenly, they're locked outside a fortress they used to walk freely through. And they'll notice. This is how powerful people handle disrespect. They don't get louder. They get quieter. They don't explain what they're doing. They just do it, and the impact is felt. Because when someone suddenly feels like you're no longer emotionally available, no longer present, no longer paying attention, they panic. They realize something changed, and they weren't warned, and that makes them respect you more than any monologue ever could. Machiavelli's core truth was simple. Make kindness a privilege, not a personality. If everyone gets your kindness by default, it loses value. But if it must be earned and can be lost, it becomes sacred, rare, powerful. You stop being nice. You become calculated, not cruel, just intentional. That shift done right rewrites how people treat you. They pause before taking. They ask before assuming. They check themselves. And suddenly, you're not being tested anymore. Because once you've drawn the line and enforced it, once you've withdrawn and gone silent, once people have felt the chill that replaces your warmth, you become a different kind of presence entirely. Not just respected, but remembered. In the next step, you build a world where you never have to say no again because no one dares to ask. Now you reach the summit of Machiavellian boundary setting, not just enforcing respect, but building a life where respect is assumed, not demanded, not negotiated, assumed. It's the difference between defending your castle from invaders and designing your kingdom so that no one even dares approach without permission. And this, according to Machiavelli, is true command. The kind that doesn't need to bark orders. The kind that shapes behavior through environment, reputation, and psychological architecture. So how do you build this kind of life? Start with your ecosystem. Most people build lives where boundaries are add-ons, afterthoughts, patches on a broken system. But that's reactive living. A boundary should not be something you install after someone pushes you. It should be a part of your daily infrastructure. If your phone is always buzzing, your email is always open, your schedule always flexible, you're not setting boundaries. You're leaving the gates wide open, Machiavelli would say. Fix the structure, not just the moment. That means designing your time, your routines, your access points to protect your peace before it's even threatened. Don't wait to say no to the wrong person. Build a schedule so sacred that they don't even see an opening to ask. Make your availability rare. Build in your rituals, your workouts, your walks, your silent mornings. They are policy, not optional, not negotiable. When your life is structured around what nourishes you, people learn quickly. Access is limited, and limited access always increases value. Next, upgrade your role in people's minds. You are not their emergency contact for emotional crises. You are not the human sponge for every unresolved conflict in their life. You are not the default yes person. Redefine your image. When people think of you, they should not think, oh, they'll understand. They should think, I better come correct. This doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. It means becoming exact, surgical with your time, sharp with your standards, unapologetic with your needs. Here's the Machiavellian formula, as consistency plus distance hide reverence. Be consistent in how you show up, respectful, focused, unshakable, but also distant, not physically energetically. Let people wonder what you're thinking. Don't give away all your reactions. Don't flood every space with your opinions. Speak less. Mean more. The more mystery you carry, the more meaning your words will hold. You ever notice how the people who say the least in meetings are often the ones everyone watches closely? That's not accidental. It's design. You don't need to fill the room to influence it. You just need to control the gravity of your presence. When you speak, it should feel like a shift. When you set a boundary, it should feel like a door locking. When you leave, it should feel like a season ending. Train people with contrast. Respond warmly to respect. Respond neutrally to disrespect. No tantrum, no dramatic exits, just a complete removal of access. That contrast becomes a memory. And memories shape behavior faster than rules. Someone violates your time. They don't get another chance, not because you're cruel, because that's how systems work. Boundaries are not emotional, they're architectural. You don't feel like closing the gate. You just do. And here's the final trick Machiavelli would whisper in your ear. Let others disqualify themselves. You don't need to call out every offense. You don't need to write a speech for every friend who disappointed you. Just keep rising. Higher standards, higher quality of life, higher expectations. Keep building the kind of kingdom where only those who respect the rules feel comfortable staying. The rest, they'll self-select out, and it will look natural, quiet, peaceful, no smoke, no explosion. Just one less person who calls. One less energy leak in your system. That's the win. That's what people don't realize about boundaries. It's not about confrontation. It's about construction. You're building a life that's so aligned, so well fortified, so deeply rooted in self-respect that manipulation has no foothold. Guilt bounces off the walls. Chaos gets turned around at the door. You don't have to defend the gate when the whole fortress enforces itself. In this version of you, people pause before asking for favors. They don't assume. They inquire. They present their needs with awareness. And you decide based on policy, not pressure. You're no longer navigating your life by what makes others comfortable. You're navigating by what keeps your sovereignty intact. Your schedule, your mind, your nervous system, all of it becomes a high-value domain. And not everyone gets the key. So when someone says, "You've changed," you don't flinch. You nod. You have. You've moved from being the person who explains boundaries to the person who doesn't need to. Because now, your life enforces them for you. Now your silence speaks louder than your stories ever could. Now your energy is rare and your presence has gravity. And from this place, this mountain of earned self-respect, you don't have to say no often. Because the kinds of people who would force you to say it, they don't make it this far. They turn back at the base. They feel the altitude and they know this is not a place where I can take lightly. This is not a person I can push. And if I want to be in their world, I need to rise. That is the highest form of boundary, not a wall you guard, but an atmosphere you create. One that tells the world without speaking, I know who I am. I know what I tolerate. I know what I deserve. and I will no longer negotiate that truth for anyone. This is your new standard, not enforced just in moments, but in the design of your entire life.